Introduction. In the quiet halls of Stoic philosophy, intelligence is never measured by a high IQ or a collection of academic degrees. Instead, Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus taught us that true wisdom is a moral and practical disposition. It is how we navigate the storm, how we treat the stranger, and most importantly, how we govern our own minds. To the Stoics, foolishness is not a permanent identity, but a state of being lost in the fog of ego. By identifying these 6 signs, we aren't seeking to mock others. We are performing an autopsy on the habits that kill our own potential. Let us look into the mirror of Stoic reason and see if any of these shadows belong to us. 1. The fortress of the closed mind. A closed mind is often mistaken for conviction, but in reality, it is a defensive mechanism born of fear. When a person refuses to entertain new ideas, they are essentially declaring that they have already reached the finish line of truth. The deep reality. Stoicism teaches that the universe is in a constant state of flux, panta rhei. To have a closed mind is to attempt to stop a river with your bare hands. It stems from intellectual fragility, the fear that if one's current beliefs are proven wrong, their entire identity will crumble. The wise alternative. The wise person practices epike, suspension of judgment. They view their beliefs as working hypotheses, always subject to better evidence, the plague of external blame. The hallmark of a foolish person is the external locus of control. To them, failure is always a conspiracy of the stars, the economy, or a difficult boss. The deep reality. When you blame others, you are surrendering your power. If the cause of your misery is out there, then the cure must also be out there, making you a victim of circumstances. Stoics emphasize the dichotomy of control. While you cannot control the weather or the market, you have absolute sovereignty over your response. The wise alternative. The wise person performs an after-action review of their own soul. They ask, even if I wasn't the cause, how am I the solution? 3. Arrogance, the mask of insecurity. Arrogance is the loud announcement of a small ego. It is the need to be the smartest person in the room to avoid feeling like the most vulnerable. The deep reality. Arrogance creates a learning ceiling. If you believe you are already at the top, there is nowhere left to go but down. In Stoicism, pride, oesis, is considered a literal fog that prevents us from seeing the path. It is a form of cognitive blindness. You cannot learn what you think you already know. The wise alternative. Intellectual humility. The truly wise recognize that the more they know, the more they realize they don't know. 4. The void of empathy. A lack of empathy is often framed as toughness, but it is actually a failure of logic. To ignore the suffering or perspective of another is to ignore a fundamental piece of human data. The deep reality. Stoics believe in cosmopolitanism, that we are all part of a single, rational hive. Lacking empathy is like the left hand trying to hurt the right hand. It is irrational and self-destructive. It indicates a narrowness of spirit, where a person is so consumed by their own internal monologue that they cannot hear the symphony of humanity around them. The wise alternative. Oikeiosis. This is the Stoic practice of expanding our circle of concern to include others, recognizing that their perspective is as real and valid as our own. 5. Stagnation through fear of change. The foolish person treats the comfort zone as a sanctuary, not realizing it is actually a tomb. They fear change because they view it as a loss of self, rather than a gain of experience. The deep reality. Resistance to change is a rejection of nature itself. Marcus Aurelius noted that fright at change is the height of folly, as every good thing in our lives, growth, birth, and discovery, required change. Fear of the unknown is a sign that one values security over virtue. The wise alternative. A more fatty love of faith. The wise person doesn't just tolerate change, they embrace it as the necessary fuel for their evolution. 6. The impulse to speak before listening. The fool speaks to impress. The wise man listens to progress. The person who dominates every conversation is essentially saying that their current knowledge is more valuable than anything the world could teach them. The deep reality: this behavior reveals a lack of impulse control. When we speak, we are merely repeating what we already know. When we listen, we are gathering the intel of life. Stoicism values silence as a discipline because it forces us to observe our own thoughts before they become words. The wise alternative: the 2-to-1 rule. Nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we may hear twice as much as we speak. Conclusion: the path to the prokopton. In Stoicism, the person making progress is called a prokopton. They aren't perfect, but they are awake. The 6 signs listed above are not a life sentence. They're a diagnostic tool. If you found yourself in these points, do not despair. Shame is a heavy weight that prevents movement, but awareness is the light that shows the way. True wisdom begins the moment you decide to be a student of your own flaws. By opening your mind, taking responsibility, embracing humility, practicing empathy, welcoming change, and finding power in silence, you cease to be a fool and begin the noble journey toward the good life.